As you know, I'm Stephen Zarlenga, director and co-founder of the Institute and author of the book, The Lost Science of Money, which most of you have read by now. And we began these meetings in 2005. And the reason at that point in time was that things were happening that absolutely required that the monetary nature, the monetary nature as the cause of our problems had to be better understood and discussed. And that's why we began these conferences. Since then, the danger to our country has grown dramatically. And we pointed out that McNamara, Kennedy's defense secretary or war secretary, had told us that the only thing that prevented an all-out exchange of missiles between Russia and the United States in 1962 missile crisis was, quote, blind luck. Now, it happened again in 1983. And people don't realize this. When a Russian lieutenant colonel, and that rank, by the way, it's just one level above captain, he refused to launch Russian missiles against us in response to a mistaken idea that we had sent missiles in the air against them. So he again saved civilization. This is 2 times in one generation that civilization as we know it has been rescued. Now, we've been very lucky. We've been very lucky, but how lucky can you expect to be with this administration in the White House? Putin announced, leader of Russia, announced that they are now again flying airplanes in the air full-time, loaded with missiles, targeted on American cities. That targeting had been removed from both our side and their side for a while. They've retargeted us. And that's in response to this insane Bush policy of putting a missile shield, he thinks, into Czechoslovakia. Well, these can be viewed as actions of a ruling order which understands that it's doomed to eradication, which knows that there is a growing awareness in the population that is going to lead ultimately to a confiscation of its wealth and power, even to punishment and imprisonment. This awareness of its sleazy philosophy and its methods, its methodology and laughable justifications, an awareness of its crimes against life. And that's an awareness that we, the American Monetary Institute, is proud to be a part of creating this awareness in the monetary area. Humanity will win this struggle, but this is a deadly dangerous moment in the development of humanity, because we realize that mankind's opponent, in the form of an insane God and his insane followers, and all the creepy characters that have been spawned against humanity, they may viciously take as much of the greatness of human achievement down with them. And so far, we see that those within that evil order who have more sense and understand some of this, but they don't have the guts to stop what the crazies are doing, or even to talk about it openly. Well, we'd all better become much more vocal. We'd all better apply whatever resources we have, and that includes financial resources, and those are generally meager, but we better do something with what we have that should be brought to bear now in the service of life, love, our animal and plant friends, our planet. It was recently discovered that Mars once had a supply of water. Perhaps there was also intelligent life there. And perhaps they did not have the courage to take the action necessary to save their atmosphere and their planet. Wouldn't it be a shame if something like that happened here? And as it's happening, people, you people, others, realize that the death that's coming to you and to your loved ones is something that may not have been necessary. The word shame would not even apply in such a situation. To be silent when these things are happening or potentially happening. And to know then, as that was happening, to be aware that all past human achievement, all past human greatness that we know of, ended up in such a catastrophe, ended up nowhere. The human race is destined, must be destined for something greater than that. And what can make it happen is groups like ourselves. We're destined for something better if we make it so. It's that simple. Now, we suggested that our civilization's living on borrowed time because we've been living on borrowed money for too long. We've allowed the bankers the power to lend us our own money system and thereby control our society. But I pointed out there's nothing in their background, training, souls, outlook that qualifies them to rule over humanity. And look at what this system has done, how it's unjustly concentrated money and power and wealth into the hands of a corrupt financial elite. It's ignored our crucial infrastructure. For example, you all saw the pictures of the Minneapolis bridge that collapsed, on the I-35 bridge. When I was in Kansas City with Reed Simpson helping, and Charles Walters, Gary Crom, helping open our AMI chapter in Kansas City, coming back to Chicago, I had to drive on I-35. That's the road that the bridge was on. And we went over a number of bridges. That's before the collapse. Had the collapse occurred and I was still doing that drive, I would have been concerned over every bridge there. Bridges are one case. The New Orleans levee is another case. Even the Chicago road system is in incredibly bad condition, supposedly second worst in the nation in terms of the amount of time we spend on the road. It's been estimated just recently that 4.2 billion hours are lost every year waiting on roads in America. 4.2 billion. Who wants that to happen? Well, one of the connected facts is that 2.2 billion gallons of gasoline are used up in that process. So there's an extra sales of 2.5 billion gallons of gasoline, thanks to the roads being in bad condition. And so that's a motivation for one powerful group. In July, the engineers told us that 10,000 of our 80,000 dams in this country are literally in danger of collapse. Well, some people think that the answer to that infrastructure problem is to build more infrastructure. And that, to some extent, would be true because that would reduce the pressure. But it's not the answer. That treats the symptom of a diseased monetary system. The infrastructure would reemerge later in another or worse form. The answer is to reform the money system, the cause of the problem, not the symptom, and then rebuild the infrastructure. Same is true for our terrible medical insurance system. 50 million people don't have insurance in this country, including me, and I know a number of you. Another 50 million, including many of you, think you have insurance. And guess what you're going to find out? You're going to find out that it's not real. If you're from Europe and you're here, you've probably got good insurance. There, it's 1, 2. All right. Again, people think the answer is to provide the health care. And again, that would remove a lot of the pressure, and it would be a good thing. But it's not the solution. It's still dealing with a symptom of a diseased monetary structure. Unless we get to the cause, we will have these problems. And we have to get to the cause. There's no reason not to once we understand it. In general, consider whether it's better to relieve such pressures temporarily by focusing on symptoms, or should we try to use that pressure as a way to help get monetary reform? This is not a simple question. It's a very difficult question at times, because sometimes you just have to take certain actions at the symptom level. But that question should no longer be ignored. Now, as we meet, the latest banking fiasco is building up steam. Fiasco which was predicted by one of our speakers, Michael Hudson here, who wrote about this about a year and a half ago in Harper's Magazine. And these are available on the back table there for a small donation. If you want to find out what happens next in the housing crisis, you should read Michael's article, because according to my friends here in the financial markets, his article, quote, aced the whole situation. He got it exactly right. Those articles are at the back there. So about every 10 years, the banking system provides us with the latest sample or example of its mismanagement, villainy, stupidity, and any number of terms you can apply to it. Right now, they're calling it the subprime problem, as though it's the borrower's fault because he's a subprime, didn't have great credit relations. But these loans were extended at a point in time where we had the lowest interest rates in a generation. They should have all been done, if it was being done honestly, it should have all been done at fixed rates to lock in that low rate. And through all the games that the financial sector plays, oh, you can't give the average guy a break, you can't give him a good deal. They managed to get these variable rates in there, and now these people, if interest rates go up, these people really can lose their homes. Well, and with all these examples of problems from the banking sector, we still are asked, or we're told, oh, you can't trust the government to do that. You can't let the monetary system be in the hands of the government. They'll make mistakes. Well, this is a result of a constant propagandizing that we hear against government. We simply must enact monetary reforms that reverse the evil processes attacking our nation, that allow our productive power to be properly used. Reforms that simply put time on the side of justice. That's the nature of the minimal type of reform that we're asking for. We just want to get that time on our side, because from that point on, things can be reformed in a more relaxed manner without these pressures. But one result of that approach is that we cannot compromise and give up any part of the reforms we're asking for. They're minimal. We're not asking for all the things that must be done to make this a good and fair economic and monetary system. We're asking for just the necessary parts, without which you don't really make progress. If we can get these reforms enacted, will start the process of moving back from the brink of nuclear disaster, away from a future dominated by fraud and ugliness, towards a future of justice and beauty. The AMI, American Monetary Institute, or publicly supported charity like the Red Cross, started in 1996 for the independent study of monetary history, theory, and reform. The co-founder of the Institute, Dr. Lucienne de Wolf, is here also. If you, Lucienne? There she is. Please. Lucienne's generosity and help and encouragement made it possible to do the research for our book, The Lost Science of Money. Without her participation, we would never have had the book, we would not have the Institute, we would not have these conferences. So, and more, I think. By necessity, we're always fundraising. We started the Institute without an endowment. That's generally not done. Our endowment is on the back table there. It was a gift of 150 books from Robert DeFremery. And the books are back there for sale at $20 each. Bob sent us the books, and I said, Bob, do you mind if we use that as a means of, you need an initial donation to start a charitable trust? And that's what we did. So we're always in fundraising mode, and we've had to go into debt to hold these conferences and to do what we've done. We need to pay that debt off. We need to wipe out that debt. Now, if I told you the amount of it, this room could easily take care of it. And if I told you the total amount, you'd probably say, oh, why don't you just pay it off? Right. Well, if you find that what we're doing here is important and valuable, and you're in a position to help, then I'll ask you to help us so that we can do that and extinguish that debt. Because right now, it's our single biggest annual expense, is the interest on it. Our research, Lost Science of Money, published on March 21st, 2003, same day that Bush illegally invaded Iraq. And here's what the Lost Science of Money book reported on. We found a grand ongoing struggle over the control of money systems from at least Aristotle's time. We found that the battle is fought not with guns and tanks, the battle is fought with language, where definitions are the heavy artillery, particularly the definition of money. We found that this is the critical thing to focus on if you want to understand how a particular society's money system got taken over and hurt. By misdefining the nature of money, corrupt groups seize control over monetary systems. Once you have control of the money system, you've got control of the society, because whoever controls the money system controls the society, and deforming humanity in that process. The main battle line that this divides into, and again, in your readings, if you look for these things, they will help you immensely. You look, what's that group's or person's definition of money? You find somebody defining money as gold and silver, right away you know they're in a certain category of not awareness, a certain kind of primitive category, and it teaches you how to treat the rest of what's in there. You find them defining money as credit. Well, if you define money as wealth, gold and silver, then what you have is a situation where those with the wealth will also control the monetary system. In addition to their own wealth, they're controlling the mechanics of the system. You define money as credit, monetized bank credits. Since that's what bankers deal in, you're handing the power over the control of the monetary system into the financial area, into the hands of the financiers, the bankers, and related companies. If you define money correctly, as Aristotle did, and we'll review his definition, as an abstract social legal power differentiated from wealth, then the society does not have a guarantee, but it has a chance to control the monetary system to help advance, to promote the general welfare, to use a phrase that none of us would argue with. The second thing to look for when you're doing monetary research is to understand, in evaluating proposals, is that the battle line is private versus public. Will the system be controlled privately, or will it be controlled publicly, meaning through government? Well, since government is the direct the only organization that can act for the public. If you see that in a particular situation or theoretical or theory that it's being defined as something that has to be private, you've got a problem right there with that, because you know where that's going to lead. If it's controlled privately, you cannot expect the privates in control to do anything other than act in their own interest. That's what they'll do. And that's not what's needed in a monetary system. Part of that battle between public and private led to something which today has attained horrific levels, and that is the attack on government. We found in Adam Smith that he began the attack on government in order to keep the monetary power in England in the hands of the private Bank of England. Adam Smith, father of economics, really the arch enemy of government-controlled money. He hated it when our colonies were creating money and getting independent of England. He hated it when we issued the continental currency, which allowed us to fight and beat the Brits. Okay. Societies, this attack on government started by Adam Smith. And we found the smoking gun on that. We'll talk about that on Saturday or Sunday. But he did that. He attacked the British government in order to stop ideas that were promoting that the Bank of England should be reconstituted. Powers of the Bank of England should be brought back into the government. And Adam Smith began to attack the English government in the most vicious terms for a professor, a learned man. It's really truly vicious terms, and the way he attacked were lies. They're not factual. And we'll talk about that too. But he inserted, well, I better get to that in just a moment. He misdefined money. All right. The nature of money as an abstract legal power has to determine monetary reform. That has to be what monetary reform is based upon, the actual nature of money. Do not confuse money with credit. What is happening today in our society is that when most if you confuse money with credit, you're handing that power over to the bankers. This is what economics does. And when they're talking about money, they're using the word credit. Money and credit are two different things. They're two different things. They function differently. And by always considering money to be credit, what the effect is to remove the concept of money from the language. It's very difficult for some people to think in terms of money today because all the ideas that come into their head are for credit. Now, I mentioned that at one point. I gave a talk to monetary reformers at the House of Lords in 2004 and mentioned that point about taking this concept out of the language. And around the room, there were 6 or 8 people who had a sign of recognition. I could see that they understood what I was talking about. Not about money, exactly, but they understood the concept of removing a concept from language. They understood that power. And that has happened. And we've put a stop to that. Okay, our method examines historical case studies as the facts on which a theory has to be based. Now, this is very basic. You have theories that must conform to the facts. This is methodology. Without that, the theory is meaningless. If the facts contradict the theory, any of you who are in science, you know, it's incredible for you to even hear that in economics that's not the case. I gave a talk in Radford, Virginia, for Professor Glenn Martin's group, the International Philosophers for Peace group in '04. And I told them what economists do in methodology, and they didn't believe me. Remember, they were laughing in the aisles. I said, economists will do this. They do that. They do that. They didn't believe it. Well, Ludwig von Mises, this happens particularly with the what you could call the right-wing schools or the monetarist groups or the Austrian School of Economics. Ludwig von Mises, one of their bright lights, actually said 3 times that we know of that mere facts can never disprove his theories. Now, if you're a scientist, you know, that's ridiculous. But all of you should understand that the facts have to be explained properly. That's what theories are supposed to do. We examine historical case studies as the facts. Monetary facts take place over a long period of time. It takes at least a generation to see how a monetary system's operating, usually. So you have to look to history. That's where the data is. And so history plays a big part of what we do. On page 656 of the Lost Science of Money book, we summarize what money is, what we're reforming. And we take our inheritance from past genius. First, from Aristotle, who gave us the science of money. And he wrote, money exists not by nature, but by law. Plato agreed, and his phrase is a money token for purposes of exchange. From the Roman, Julius Paulus, this device, being officially promulgated, circulated, and maintained, its purchasing power, not so much from its substance as from its quantity. Then a long darkness. And then from Anglican Bishop George Berkeley, quote, whether the true idea of money as such be not altogether that of a ticket or counter. Locke and Franklin helped dramatically. They viewed money as a pledge for wealth rather than wealth itself. George Knapp, our test that the money is accepted in payments made to the state's offices. And from Alexander Del Mar, the greatest monetary historian of all time, we get a sufficient definition. What is commonly understood as money has always consisted tangibly of a number of pieces of some material marked by public authority, named or understood in the laws or customs, that its palpable characteristic was its mark of authority, its essential characteristic, the possession of value defined by law, and its function, the legal power to pay debts and taxes, and the mechanical power to facilitate the exchange of other objects possessing value. We accept all of these concepts at the American Monetary Institute, and we add, money's essence, apart from whatever is used to signify it, is an abstract social power embodied in law as an unconditional means of payment. We could call it an Aristotelian concept of money, a social or legal concept of money. We owe a great deal to Aristotle. He gave us not only the science of money, but we learned from other things that he did. He refused to discuss and argue about political systems unless they had actually, at some point in time, actually existed. He would not waste time discussing totally arbitrary or theoretical systems. He told us that in order to evaluate a proposal, you have to know the motivation of the proposer. That without that, you're really not in a position to evaluate what a proposal is, good or bad. And I think one of the most important things he told us, we can learn by doing. Learn by doing. And this is what's going to happen in the monetary area, because it's been done wrong for so long that many of the things are going to be learned as it goes. But the economists have basically substituted a mythology of money for this science. Adam Smith comes along and he defines money as metal by weight. And he tells us that you just disregard the stamp on the money. Just look at the metal by weight. What's he done? He's knocked out the entire legal aspect of money, because it's the stamp that's the legal part of it. The other thing that the economists have done is to remove morality from their science. They have done this proudly, and they advertise that we have removed what they call normative considerations. They won't use the word morals. They won't say we removed moral considerations, because then people will understand and get upset. They say we've removed normative considerations from our science. Well, regarding morality, the money system is society's greatest dispenser of either justice or injustice. A good system functions fairly, helps the creation of values for life. A bad, unjust system obstructs the creation of these values, gives special privileges to some, disadvantages to others, causes unfair concentrations of wealth and power, leading to social strife, eventually warfare, and 1,000 unforeseen consequences, both spiritual and material. And we take our cue from Anglican Archbishop of Canterbury Templeton's 1942 call for the nationalization of the Bank of England. Now, you have to understand, 1942, the bombs are falling on England. Hundreds of thousands are dying. The Archbishop of Canterbury gets up and reads a paper calling for the nationalization of the Bank of England. In all of that mess, what was going on? What motivated him to do that? We've always had a very strong interest in how that came about, because the way in which he described it, and that's at the end of chapter 20 of my book, is one of the most accurately written monetary statements that you can ever find anywhere. And the mystery was, how does an Archbishop of Canterbury, how is he able to write that? Who was he talking to? How did they, what did they tell him? Because we'd like to approach modern day religious people with those same arguments. And in fact, someday someone's going to do a study on that, and will then know exactly what happened there. He concluded his letter on this with the statement, "What should be the servant has become the master." The AMI's intention is that money be the servant, not the master of mankind. And the reason that this is so important is money is, in essence, a fourth branch of government. When privately held, monetary control gives far too much power into private hands. It creates a plutocracy, the rule by wealth. It destroys humanity. This little AMI conference is today in America the main modern movement for monetary reform here in our country. And our program embodies it. In the UK, it's the James Gibbs Stewart Bromsgrove Group, and they primarily embody a program put forward by James Robertson, a very intelligent guy, and his program and ours are virtually identical. They differ primarily in historical background of their country compared to the historical background of our country. We urge all of you to help put these reforms forward. And we'll do what we can to make that easier for you. If you help these programs, basically you're promoting monetary reform. And if you don't, you're not. It's not a version of George Bush's, you're either with us or against us, by any means. But there is an element of that operating here. And if people are attacking these programs, we're open to discuss these things at all times. We've put our program on the web about a year and a half ago, inviting comment, inviting criticism. We've received a little bit back, and we've updated the American Monetary Act, even the copy you have, thanks to Randy Cook back there, who helped us with rephrasing the farming proposal. We made some other parts of it that we thought were obvious, explicitly obvious. It's still a program in creation. It's not yet set in stone. But the broad aspects of it are pretty much set in stone. And those broad aspects are that control of the money system has to move away from private control towards a social, governmental control. It has to move away from commodity notions towards money as an abstract legal power. And what's the third part? Oh, there's one other part. I can't remember it right now. Pardon me. There's it's in all our brochures. And it's right here in our conference brochure, our conference announcement, these three things. You see, the idea was people wanted to get together and argue over these things. We didn't think that these were arguable. And we learned, and you're going to see a presentation later today from John, or tomorrow, from John Hodson, which is called How an Idea, When an Idea's Time Has Come. And he explains what that means. An idea's time has come only when you've got a group that has agreed this is what we have to do. As long as you're still arguing over that, oh no, you have to do it this way, oh no, you have to do it that way, you never get to a point where that idea's time has come. Now you have to understand, not all the people arguing may not really be for monetary reform. We don't know that. So we move forward with what we know has to be in this plan. Those are those first two, away from commodities, away from private, and the third part. Most important part. Away from private banking credits being monetized as money. Away from distinguishing between credit and money. Now, some people have told us, oh, you're just here you're going to break the banks, you're going to hurt the banks. That's not our intention. We're not trying to stop bank lending. Our program envisages that there will continue to be bank lending. What our program stops is bank creation of money. Because when that kind of power is in private hands, it acts like a tax on all of us. And then what happens, we have this crazy system that we're operating under with bankers creating money, And some of the talks you're going to hear, because we went through them last night, really going to be excellent from Bob and Dick on how they're forced to keep creating money in order to keep the system going, in order to pay interest. All the problems that then creates for our society are getting blamed on something called fiat money. And so we're told, oh, you can't have fiat money. Look, we have fiat money, and look at what it's doing to our world. It's so important to distinguish in terminology. It's just crucial. You have to distinguish between fiat money, and the nature of money is fiat. Aristotle tells us that, and we'll go into that later. Money exists not by nature, not something that comes out of nature, out of a mine or out of a farm, but by law. It's something that comes out of society and government. That's the key. Well, good. The distinction to make is between the private and the public creation of fiat money. The private creation of fiat money must never be allowed. That then operates just as a tax on all the rest of us. The public creation of fiat money is a totally different thing. The public is us. The government ultimately is us if we start to act like good citizens and start voting in large enough numbers. Public creation of fiat money can be directed to necessary things that at least the society believes are good for the general welfare. Private creation of fiat money only does that under the most severe pressure because they're too busy promoting their own agendas. And what's that done? It's concentrated wealth to absolutely ridiculous levels in our society. Okay, at our first conference, I pointed out how a group just this size, could grow exponentially within just a few years, within 5 or 7 years, to the point where you'd have a chapter operating in every congressional district. Just double the numbers 4 or 5 times, and that's what happens. And the method of doing that was each one tell one each year. Each person bring in one new person each year, and that's what happens. But that's not easy, we find out. And we keep looking for ways to expand our group, and we'll tell you about some of those later. We had a very good experience last night. For the first time, we did a pre-conference free seminar here for people in the Chicago area, and about 50 people showed up. And the reaction was just outstanding, just outstanding. So that's going to be the future of the Chicago chapter. And one of the things that we're going to do with that chapter is discover how to reach local political figures. For example, I pointed out last night, Cook County is in deep financial trouble, and the guy in charge of Cook County tried to cut expenses across the board. He tried to cut the whole county budget 17% across the board. That means for fire, for health, hospitals, everything, police. It's not possible. You can't do that way. Now, what we're going to try to do, what we're eventually going to find out how to do, is to teach these local political people that a solution of the national monetary problem, which can be done in Washington easily, painlessly, except for the financial establishment, it'll be painful for them. We're going to teach them how that will solve the Cook County problem. And virtually every county, they may not be in that much trouble, but they're across the land. All the counties of this country are in trouble. Our representatives in Washington, congressmen and senators and everybody else, they cannot ignore it if the local political establishments are demanding monetary change. and are aware that it's within our grasp, we think that that's going to be a formula for success. In addition to that, though, we have to reach the religious establishment. The area of morality is, in theory, where they operate. And what we're talking about here is a moral action. We try to stay away from arguments over, what about this factor in economics? What about the velocity? What about you can argue over those things forever. And the people in control would like that just fine. You keep arguing while they're in control. It's a formula for them, not for us. The moral argument is not answerable. It's not answerable. They cannot refute the moral argument. And the moral argument is quite simply, why should that group have those special privileges that the rest of us don't have? Why should they be able to, in effect, issue a tax on all the rest of us? What's the reason? What's the moral reason? There is none. They're stuck. If you stay on that focus, on that level of morality, there's no argument against us. And let's stay there. As to the actual mechanics, enough is known about that now to know that there's no way that any kind of system that we would put forward is going to be far better than what we have now. There's no chance it's going to be worse. And then Aristotle's method gets used for determining all of the exact details. You're going to have to learn by doing, keeping the moral imperative in mind. Well, I'm getting on a little bit too long here.